Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a graphic nature and in graphic detail, and may not be suitable for children under 13. Listener discretion is advised.
All right, everyone, welcome back to episode 14 of Unsung Murder Ballads. I am Janus Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And it's just the two of us tonight. None of the others could join us, so we're on our own.
I hope we survive.
Yeah, think you can handle it?
I sure hope so.
So we're going to be doing our first case from Canada this week. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Greyhound bus murder.
I certainly haven't.
Yes, it's an interesting one. So it involves two people, a guy by the name of Vincent Li and a guy by the name of Tim McLean.
All right.
Yeah, so with that said, Tim McLean was born on October 3rd, 1985 in Winnipeg. Manitoba, I guess, is what do they call them up there? Not states, province? Yes.
Yeah.
But in 2008, he was 2,000, Jesus. He was 2,000 years old.
Oh my God, Jesus?
Yes, he was, yeah. In 2008, he was 22 years old and had been working as a carnival barker in Edmonton, Alberta. Now, Tim was an active person. He loved sports and all that sorts of stuff. He loved motorcycles. You can find photos of this guy out on his motorcycle having a good time. So he always made friends easily. He was generally just a happy, friendly guy.
Always a bad sign in a story like this.
Yeah, isn't it? Like, we never start off with the killer being the happy-go-lucky guy. It's always like
it's never like, all right, so this guy was a fucking asshole. Jump right in.
So Tim was making good money being a carnival barker, which I don't know much about that. Like, so to me, I was a little surprised at that. But he did spend it as fast as he made it, which is probably
He's just
true.
like you for real.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Like, he doesn't keep it around. So, and hey, I'm not judging.
Yeah, you are not in a position to.
No. I doubt he was spending it on board games like I do. So.
Truth.
So in July of 2008, he finished working at a carnival in Edmonton. And because the carnival was going to move on to Regina, Saskatchewan, but Tim was moving on to Winnipeg. So at this point, he decided he was going to take a Greyhound bus home. And that's what he was going to do. Now, there are reports that friends and coworkers offered to buy him a plane ticket home, but he opted to take the bus anyway. So if there's a tragic moment in all of this, it's this moment. You know, he could.
Although I can understand, like, I am also a taker of public transit, so.
Yeah, no, I can see it. But it's just sad that had he opted to take someone's offer and fly home, then this wouldn't have happened to him.
Right.
Right.
Would have just happened to someone, and we would have been talking about someone else then.
That's true. We move on. So the bus number that he got on was 1170. So we'll just put a little pin in that one. So we move on to the other person in this case. It's funny because whenever I think about these two people and talking about this, in my mind, I'm picturing like two meteors just going straight towards each other, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about keeping these two meteors from colliding.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So you have Vincent Li, who was born in Dandong, China on April 30th, 1968. In 1992, Li graduated from Wuhan Institute of Technology with a bachelor's degree in computing. From 94 to 98, Li worked in Beijing as a computer software engineer. He immigrated to Canada on June 11th of 2001, and he became a citizen of Canada in November of 2006. Now, starting in the fall of 2004, he worked in Winnipeg doing menial jobs at like a place called the Grant Memorial Church for about 6 months to support his wife, Anna. The pastor there, named Tom Castor, so that's weird. His name is Pastor Castor. which almost is one of my favorite Kiss songs.
My first thought exactly. I was like, okay, Pastor Castor.
But so he employed Li, and he said that Li seemed happy to just have a job, and he was committed to doing the job well, despite the big language barrier with the other, especially with the other congregation members. Now, the pastor is quoted to having said that he thinks that Li would feel occasionally frustrated with not being able to fully communicate but that the rest of the staff there and the members of the congregation were very patient and they responded to him well.
Right. I mean, that's a very understandable way to feel.
Yeah, and I can see it because I work with a lot of people who don't speak English very well. So,
And I've been that person working at a job where no one else spoke English, and it was my job to try and understand their language, and it is so hard.
it is hard. Yeah, and luckily now our phones all have translators, which makes it infinitely easier.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can see where, especially back in the early 2000s, where that wasn't quite the case, that would be incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
So Castor also said that Li did not show any signs of anger issues or have any other kind of trouble by the time he had left in the spring of 2005. At that point, Li began working as a forklift operator in Winnipeg that summer while his wife worked as a waitress. So at this point, they're both working, trying to keep their shit together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Li said he converted to Christianity and was even baptized at that church, but only after he heard the voice of God talking to him.
Interesting.
Yeah. Li said that the voice called him specifically, the third story of the Bible. And that he was the second coming of Jesus, destined to save people from an alien invasion.
Oh, Lord. He is unwell.
Yeah, he's very unwell. In preparation, the voice would regularly order Li to travel throughout the country on foot or by bus, often disappearing from his home for days on end on these little walkabouts. And his wife supports these claims.
Oh, not much choice. Who else does she have in this country, most likely?
Probably, yeah. I didn't even think of that way. I for some reason imagined her as already a Canadian citizen, but you're right. If he had to become a citizen, she probably wasn't.
Right, exactly. Like if he couldn't just do it by marriage, and I think Canada, it's easier.
Yeah, it's very easy to do it in Canada. There's a common law, like a really common law marriage thing that they do. So, but due to Li's paranoia and his belief that he was constantly under threat by alien infiltrators, he he began carrying a buck knife on his person for protection pretty much everywhere he went.
Yikes.
Yeah.
What's a buck knife? Sorry, pause on the definition of a buck knife.
It's basically like a smaller hunting knife, and it usually folds up and fits in your pocket.
Okay, like one of those little flippy open ones?
Not like a switchblade where it has the little button that you hit. This one you actually have to take your hand to and fold out.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, but they can come in a pretty big size, even though they fold. So
okay. All right, cool.
Okay. Now, Li had been examined by the William Osler Health Center in 2005 after he was found wandering a highway by the Ontario Provincial Police, and he said that he was out there following the sun at the command of God. I mean, my thought is, how are you following the sun? It doesn't exactly move. I don't know.
Well, clearly nothing. You can't apply logic to someone who is beyond.
That's true. I suppose if you were traveling far enough, you could follow the sun.
Right. Like if you're so delusional that you're thinking the earth is flat, I can follow the sun to where it sets.
I was thinking more, it's funny that you said that. I was thinking more like sailors.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, like literally following the
like
a compass.
You're like, if the world's flat.
My like a flat earth is one of my favorite conspiracies, just like one of my like favorite ones to read about and learn about. So my mind does jump there.
I really believe that new flat earther thing started as a joke and people really bought into it.
Oh, 100%. It's like there's like a meme that's like, I said at first as a joke, bro. I don't think it's a joke anymore.
No, it's really not.
It's really bad, actually, but that's not the point of today. He is following the sun.
Correct, at the command of God.
The command of God.
So some local newspapers reported that Li had been diagnosed with schizophrenia by the staff at that health center that he had to go to, and that he had started refusing his medication. However, official records show that Li it was never documented that he had any kind of mental illness. I mean, he clearly may, but it's never been documented.
Right. I mean, it sounds like schizophrenia for sure.
It certainly does, yes. So Li first moved to Edmonton in 2006, abruptly leaving his wife alone in Winnipeg until she would be able to join him later once he found stable employment. Now, the jobs that he was doing included janitorial work, mechanics, a cashier at Walmart, he was a team member at McDonald's, and he was a newspaper delivery person. So he's not doing anything to make himself rich.
Right.
But it's also probably because he's having trouble holding down any job with any real responsibility.
Right.
Now, his boss, Vincent Ogert, described Li as reliable, hardworking, and not showing any signs of trouble. But Li was fired from Walmart following a disagreement with another employee. And there's no more information on that one, just a disagreement. So I'm assuming an argument. He probably cursed at the guy.
Yeah, probably, or like did it in front of customer. Like you can get fired for relatively little.
That's true. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I'll say this. I don't mean it against Walmart, but probably easier at Walmart than most other places.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, they have that family-friendly kind of feel to them.
Right, for sure.
Now, shortly before that incident, Li would ask for time off from his delivery job so he could go to Winnipeg for a job interview, which I find interesting because I would never ask my job for time off to go to a job interview.
Right, that's bold.
Yeah, that's.
But I guess if you're working like a less like I don't know, like a less white collar job, that like there's a certain turnover that's expected, and I feel like there's less that's held against you when you're like if you're planning to leave for a really good job.
Yeah, no, I can see that, and I could also see, because you're right. If it's a low entry job, you could easily be like, and especially if you're talking about moving to another city, you could be like, hey, I need a day off because we're moving to Winnipeg, and I really gotta, get to this interview. So I can see that. Yeah.
Right.
And if you're a good employee, they'll let you, they're going to let you do it. They're going to want to support you.
Right.
So at 12:05 p.m. on July 28th in Edmonton, Li boarded a Greyhound bus bound for Winnipeg. On July 29th at 6 p.m., Li got off the bus in Erickson, Manitoba, because God told him to. So with his 3 pieces of luggage, he spent that night on a bench next to a grocery store. Yeah, according to one witness, he was seen at 3 a.m. sitting bolt upright on a bench with his eyes wide open, just staring.
Yeah, this man, there is a mental illness there for sure.
I can't even imagine what that would have looked like to that witness.
Terrifying.
I would have shit myself. I think I would have called the authorities.
Maybe I don't know, like I don't know, being it's like I live in the city. I know you used to live in the city. Like I feel like I see people in all sorts of states at all hours, and sometimes I don't clock it as like I'm like, you're having a rough night, and that's none of my business.
All right, I suppose, but especially now that I'm doing a true crime podcast, I sit there and think to myself, what if this person hurts somebody?
Right, which is like it's a good thought. Like maybe I'm a little too like permissive that I don't think about stuff like that anymore after living in the city for so long.
Well, I can see the understanding of not wanting to get involved because
Right.
Seriously, there was one time, and I apologize to the listeners now. This is gonna be a little tangent, but there was one time, I was in college. I woke up one Saturday morning. I had nowhere to be, and I heard a sound that sounded like someone was beating a car with like a metal bat. Like that's the general noise that I thought I heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and looked out my front window, and I saw a kid come running out of the convenience store across the street and run and turn on the corner and keep going. And then the owner of the place came out behind him holding up a paddle or something, clutching his stomach, and there was blood everywhere.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and I realized that kid had just robbed the place and shot the owner. So I called police. The police show up. I give my statement, and I don't think anything of it. And then, however, I don't know how many weeks later, I get a summons to court to be a witness. And then I had to miss all these days of school because I had called in and I was a witness and they needed my testimony. And I remembered being aggravated because here I'm in college and I'm missing all my classes. So I almost convinced myself that I shouldn't have gotten involved.
Right. I mean, there's a major issue in our court systems there in that, like, they barely pay you for jury duty and they don't pay you for being a witness.
Not at all. Yeah. And I was missing multiple days of school. Luckily, my professors were really cool about it,
Hmm.
but it wasn't something I would, like, not that I wouldn't do it again, but I would be hesitant to do it again, you know?
Yeah.
So I can sort of see where you're coming from. It does mess with your life a little bit.
Hmm.
Back to Vincent Li.
Yes, Vincent.
So Vincent sat on that bench all night long. And on the morning of July 30th, while still sitting there, he took out his laptop and he made a little sign and put it up on the laptop, and it said, "For sale, $600." Right? It was a brand new laptop, apparently.
Hmm.
A 15-year-old boy happened by and he said to Lee, he's like, "I don't have $600, but I have 60. Will you take that?" And Lee sold it to him for $60.
What the hell?
Yeah. Yeah. Fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That kid scored.
Yeah, for real. That's the real winner in this story.
Right? Yeah, he's probably the only winner in this story.
Yeah.
So the next day, after not hearing from God again, Lee would board Greyhound bus 1170 to continue his journey towards Winnipeg.
Hmm.
He sits on one of the front seats of the bus when he gets on. Tim McLean is sitting on the back of the bus. There are a total of about 37 people on this bus, making it about halfway full. So the bus travels. People did notice some odd behavior on the part of Lee.
Hmm.
Apparently, he was rocking back and forth, and he had a roll of toilet paper and a cup of iced tea. And it gets better. And Lee would do this weird thing where he would tuck the roll of toilet paper under his chin, and then he would drink some of the iced tea. And when he was done sipping the iced tea, he would take the toilet paper back out from under his chin. Like, I know,
Hmm.
I know it's not funny, but it's funny.
No, that is funny. What are you doing, bro?
I It makes me want to do that in front of people to see what they would do.
Right, right. Like, is he just worried that it's gonna drip? He's just trying to catch his drips.
I guess, but it's a whole roll of toilet paper.
It's so bizarre. Oh, okay.
He's just not even making a bib out of it.
Right.
So, after a number of hours of traveling, the bus made a stop, as they do, and everyone got to take a break. And after the break, Lee got back on the bus, but decided he didn't want to sit at the front of the bus anymore.
Gotcha.
After moving slowly down the length of the bus, examining each seat, Lee settles on and sits next to Tim McLean. So Tim is just trying to sleep and get through his journey. He literally has his headphones on. He's turned. He's got his head against the window. He's just trying to get some sleep.
Hmm.
Now, Lee is sitting next to him, muttering and chanting in another language, and his weird behavior continues to escalate. Everyone around him is noticing him, but Tim is either out cold and completely unaware, or he's just trying to ignore it.
Right. Trying to not engage as to make it worse. Like, that makes sense.
Right. So now this is something else I should put in perspective for you. Tim is like 5'7", 5'8". He's athletic, but relatively skinny.
Hmm.
Lee is like 6 feet, and he's
Oh, damn.
a big dude, right? At roughly 8:30 p.m., Lee heard a voice telling him that the man next to him had to die. Oh,
Uh,
yep. A witness across the aisle said he saw Lee reach into his bag and remove the knife. As he describes it, a Rambo knife. And Lee began stabbing Tim just out of
oh,
nowhere.
on the moving bus.
Correct.
Oh, Jesus Christ, that's terrifying.
Yeah, Lee is literally on the outside towards the aisle, and Tim is against the window. So he's now, he was asleep. He's against the window, and he's got this big dude blocking blocking the aisle. So there was a
Oh,
witness.
God.
Yeah, there's a witness named Garnet Canton or Catton. So he said the attacker seemed completely oblivious to everyone else around him as the stabbing occurred. He added that he was completely shocked by Lee's calm demeanor.
Ooh, yeah, that's really spooky.
Yeah, he said, quoting, "There's no rage or anything. He was like a robot stabbing the guy." was the quote.
Oof.
At this point, Tim and witnesses begin to scream. So everyone's, and the other passengers are yelling, stop the bus, stop the bus. And the bus driver, he pulled over, and everyone on the bus is hurrying off, like creating almost a stampede and starting to hurt each other trying to get off the bus. But as I said before, unfortunately for Tim, he's literally pinned between Li and the window, blocking off any chance of escape. Tim did try his best to defend himself, and that's evident by the wounds after the fact. And there's even some reports that suggest that he even tried to climb over the seat to get away from Li. Now, there's one report that claims that Tim may have been stabbed over 60 times before the bus was fully evacuated.
Jesus Christ.
After stabbing Tim and possibly throwing him onto the aisle floor, because it's unclear at this point, because it's, their witnesses are outside the bus trying to look in. So it's unclear whether when Li stepped away from Tim, if Tim had been trying to get over the chair and fell into the aisle, or if Li just grabbed him and threw him into the aisle. So it's on that part's unclear. But Li at this point is now moving towards the front of the bus, and he tried to exit. But Bruce Martin, the bus driver, one of the passengers, and a truck driver that had stopped to kind of help everybody, they managed to keep the door closed so that Li couldn't come out. Now, Li was able to get his arm through the opening for a moment with his knife and was swinging and had actually cut someone a little bit before he had to pull his hand back in, and then they were able to close the door of the bus. So,
what a horrific situation.
Can you literally on the side of a highway? Like,
my God.
Like, what are you going to do? It's like
have an active killer trapped inside of a,
right.
Ooh.
Li, of course, after pulling his arm back in, he goes back to Tim's body and continues to mutilate it.
Oh, God.
Once Li moved away from the door, one of the people that had kept him from leaving, like holding the door closed, crept back inside the bus to kind of assess Tim's situation. Because at this point,
to see if he's still alive.
Correct. They had no idea what the hell was, is he okay kind of thing. That individual reported that he looked in, and Li looked back at him expressionless and began cutting off Tim's head.
Ooh.
So knowing Tim was dead, he left the bus, and him and the bus driver, they secured the door, and basically they were making sure that Li was not going to get off that bus. So Li does eventually decapitate Tim, and he held up the head so that people outside could see it, and he was showing absolutely no emotion.
Oh my God.
So according to one witness, Li then just dropped it to the floor, sort of like a mic drop. Let it go. Proud
Thanks
of himself.
For the imagery. Oh, Lord.
Sorry, I told you I'm one of the ones with the dark humor here.
Don't I know it?
So Li tried to exit again, and then even attempted to drive the bus.
Jesus.
But the bus driver had already gone and disabled it.
Right. Yeah, I assume took the keys out.
Well, even without that, I think he probably opened up the engine and made sure that this bus was going nowhere.
Right, true.
So again, with nothing to do, Li returns.
Where the fuck are the police?
Oh, don't worry. You will get there.
No, but seriously, how long? It takes a long. He had a hunting knife and he's decapitating someone with it. Where the fuck? I guess they're in rural Canada.
Well, yeah, they're in rural Canada. They've stopped on the middle of the highway. Now, granted, it's 2008, so cell phones are a thing.
Yeah,
smartphones aren't, but cell phones are. So right. Yes, but don't worry. We're going to get to the police shortly. We just haven't. They haven't arrived yet.
All right.
So again, with nothing else to do, Li returns to Tim's body and continues to mutilate it further. Li would later claim that the voice in his head told him that if he didn't continue to do so, Tim's body would reanimate and try to kill him.
Oh, God.
So it's around this time that the Canadian Royal Mounted Police, or is it the Royal Canadian Mounted Police? I think RCMP. Yeah, sorry. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrive.
So they're on horses?
Be funny, but no, they're not. So what do you think the first thing they do is?
Um, ooh, good question. Um, Probably interview people and do absolutely nothing to help.
I thought you were going to say shoot him through the window, and I was like, no, this isn't America.
You're right. Where I'm like, no, that would be helpful. That would be actually too correct.
Especially in this situation.
Right.
They
That would be too correct, and a cop wouldn't do it.
Right. So instead, they decided to barricade the door to the bus by putting a police car directly in front of it.
Okay.
Then they set up a perimeter around the bus, and then the police make yet another decision. Do you want to take a guess at what they did next?
Try and like ransom him, get him to come out of the bus on their terms or something.
Similar. They decided that they were just going to wait it out.
Fucking wait, what out?
Yeah, literally, they decide to stand there and do fucking nothing. They're just,
Unbelievable.
yeah, they just hold it back. Now, the RCMP do try to communicate with him. Like you said, negotiate like it's a hostage situation. They're trying to get him to drop the knife out of the window and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, reports state that Li had said something to them about needing to stay on that bus forever. Yeah. So the Canadian police waited 5 hours.
No, what? Oh my God.
5 fucking hours.
Oh, I hope they're at least clear at making everyone leave.
I mean, I don't, it's funny. I didn't look that up, whether or not like Greyhound sent out another bus to pick these people up. I'm assuming they must have.
Right,
But
because this is like a nightmare of like these people are on a bus, like they can't drive away.
right.
They're trapped watching them. Ugh.
5 long hours where Li just keeps mutilating Tim's body. He's he started
That's a long time.
Yeah, he started scattering body parts throughout the bus. He would carry parts of Tim's body with him as he moved about, including internal organs.
Is this like super clear through the windows or something?
Yeah, the lights are on inside the bus.
And the cops are sitting there watching this.
They're watching it. Then Li would go back. Yeah, he would go back around the bus and find the pieces and began putting them in bags. There are reports that they even saw Li cannibalizing parts of Tim's body.
Oh, God.
At one point, the RMCP even state they saw Li licking his fingers of Tim's blood.
Oof.
It's funny because we joked that if it had been in America, the first thing they would have done is shot him through the window. They should have shot him through the window.
Yeah, at that point, like, God, I hate to say that that's the right course of action, but do fucking something, even like a stun gun. Like,
something. The guy has a knife. These are cops with guns.
Right. It's literally, if this was America.
Yeah. Open the door. Now that you're there, open the door. Let him out.
Right.
Then deal with whatever he does next. Exactly.
Right. You're literally watching him cannibalize body parts.
It's absolutely fucking nuts to me that sat on the side of the highway like that for 5 fucking hours.
Unbelievable.
That's like, I know you probably, I don't even think you were born at this point, but I remember watching the O.J. Simpson quote unquote car chase through LA, right? And it was literally like hours of this white Ford Bronco being trailed by like a dozen police cars going like 40 miles an hour. And it went on for forever. And we were all watching it completely enthralled. But at least
we're not even shooting at the tires.
Like, no, well, it was O.J. Simpson. They weren't going to do, he's a celebrity. They were not going to do anything to put anything in danger that way. If it had been like the normal guy, like an average Joe, yes, they would have done that little maneuver, hitting the fender and spinning the car. They wouldn't have let it go on, but it was O.J. Simpson. So they let it go on, and we were all watching it live on television. But at least they were moving.
What year was that?
96, 95? No, maybe not. Maybe it was before that, because I think the trial was 95.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
So you weren't even born.
So, yeah.
Wild. But so at 1:20 a.m. on July 31st, the next day, Li did attempt to escape finally through a window, but he was immediately apprehended. In Li's pocket was a bag with Tim's nose, an ear, and part of Tim's mouth inside.
Oh.
Inside, aside from the body parts that were strewn about, Tim had suffered more than 100 cuts, stabs, and gaping wounds.
Awful.
His eyes were missing. 1/3 of his heart was missing.
What?
Yeah, and these were presumed to have been eaten by Li, as they were never found.
Oh, God.
Yeah, his eyes and 1/3 of his heart.
Holy fucking shit.
Yep. Now, Li would later deny that he ever ate any part of Tim's body. But yeah, considering they saw it through the window, kind of
Right, like I would believe an eyewitness account of that.
yeah, because that's not something. I mean, there's no reason to make up anything at this point. This guy he's already guilty. Like,
right. Well, I'm thinking like sometimes like it's not even making up. It's the mind will plant memories, like especially during a traumatic experience.
Okay.
It's something that like I've learned about in like psychology courses, but like it like I can imagine like you're seeing all this like if someone just a normal person, like not even like a cop who's used to seeing some fucked up shit, like God, if they saw licking their hands, I might have said, "Oh, he must be eating him." Like the mind will connect things, but oh God, nasty, nasty, nasty.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm fine. Don't worry. Just appalled. That's all.
Oh, I understand. This is a brutal case. They should have done something far faster and sooner and more severely.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get worse.
Oh God. How?
So,
well, okay, so they apprehended him, yes?
Yes. And Canada has no death penalty, which Li was very aware of. So when he
interesting.
When he appeared in court at the Portage La Prairie courthouse on charges of second-degree murder, the only words Li reportedly uttered were, "Please kill me. Please kill me."
Huh.
Li's trial lasted only 2 days, and only 2 psychologists spoke on the stand. They both agreed that Li was suffering from many mental breaks, obviously. On March 5th, 2009, Li was found not criminally responsible due to mental illness and untreated schizophrenia. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that so you can fully soak it in. Not criminally responsible due to mental illness and his untreated schizophrenia. This would mean,
I wonder if that's a Canadian specific, like I've never heard that specific phrasing of like not criminally responsible, because that's like that still leaves guilty open. You can be guilty and not criminally responsible, yeah?
Correct. And that's exactly what's happening here. Li would have no criminal record.
What?
And he would never see the inside of a jail cell.
What?
Yep. No criminal record. And he would never see the inside of a jail cell. Li was placed in a mental institution and was put on the correct medications that he would need. So yeah, he doesn't go to jail.
Well, I guess that like makes sense. Like, not that it's a good thing, but that's normally where someone who commits a crime like that and they get that whatever that result that it was because of their mental illness that they did it, that they would go. But like also it should be like a probably secured mental hospital.
Oh, hold on.
Oh no.
This ride isn't over yet.
Oh, I'm holding on tight.
And so Tim's family tried to change Canadian law to keep something like this from ever happening again. And that unfortunately would take far too long to do anything about Vincent Li. After a number of years in this institution, Li was responding well to his treatments and he became a model patient. Can you see where this is going?
Yep. And I hate it.
So this is just a side note on something else. In July of 2014, a RCMP officer named Ken Baker, that was one of the police officers at the site of the bus attack, he had been suffering from extreme PTSD, and he took his life due to what he experienced on that day.
Oh, God, that's awful.
So that makes this officer basically the second victim.
Yeah, yeah.
And the police officer's wife said that really, he kept taking things like really deep and really personally, because everyone that knew him would say stuff to him. They would call him the Greyhound guy
Oh God.
because
Why?
he had been there that day. So they're
Right.
like, "Oh yeah, you're the Greyhound guy." Yeah, and that just exacerbated his struggles.
Right. That's so triggering.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, that's so
So,
awful.
that same year in 2014, the Criminal Code Review Board granted Li 30-minute unescorted trips into a nearby city.
What the fuck?
30-minute,
That's a weird kind of parole.
yes, unescorted trips. So he could go off.
Unescorted.
Yep. The stipulations being that he had to be taking his medications and that he had to have a cell phone with him at all times so that he could be reached and found if necessary.
Jesus fucking Christ. That's idiotic. That's just beyond what?
Yeah, exactly. This
Like quite
guy,
possibly the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
okay, for now.
Oh, well, until the next thing you say, which will be the even dumber shit I've ever heard.
Over time, Li's unescorted time would increase in length, eventually reaching an entire day's length of time.
Like 24 hours or like,
I'm going to assume like 12 hours, like throughout the
yeah,
day.
yeah.
And eventually, Li was allowed to live outside the hospital in a lesser restrictive yet still controlled environment.
Bad.
And by February of 2017, Li was discharged altogether.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Nope. So Vincent Li is now a free man, living under the name of Will Lee Baker with no criminal record.
That shit.
No criminal record.
That's insane. That's so wrong. Like, even if you're found not criminally responsible, it needs to be known. Like, I don't know, how is murder not even the type of thing of like you're on a sex offender registry? Like, you're on a murder registry. That should be fucking known.
Correct. And it's funny that you compared it to a sex offender because you're right. And granted, I think sexual assault is equally as bad as murder or pretty damn close. But yeah, you're right. He's not on a list somewhere. He can do whatever the hell he wants. But some guy who maybe he was 19 and had sex with his 15-year-old girlfriend, he's on a list for the rest of his life.
Right. Insane.
So,
even
yeah,
if like somehow you were found, I don't know, quote unquote, not criminally responsible of like a sexual assault, you would still be on a list.
correct.
We should keep that energy for murder.
Right. And the sad part is just by changing his name. So unless someone's listening to a podcast like this and hears us say his name now, they can type in Will Lee Baker and get jack shit.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah. And while Lee is required to report into the courts every year,
every year
he has to report to the courts. But outside of that, there is no further information on where he is or what he's doing. That's it.
Horrific.
Yeah, he could be anywhere.
Oh my God, that's literally oof.
Yeah, you literally like anyone could end up dating his kid, and he's sitting next to you at like I don't know, like Canada doesn't have Thanksgiving, but you know, like you could be sitting next to him next to the Christmas holiday or something. You have no idea that he's literally no criminal record. He's just out there living his life now after mutilating a guy. Fucked
Unbelievable.
Up. Yeah, fucked up.
Fucked up.
So that is the case of Vincent Li and Tim McLean, the Greyhound.
Can I just say I'm so glad you just said that? Like I was so ready for you to say that he has killed more people since then.
No, he's it's even worse. He's a spook now. He's a ghost.
No, you mean he's dead?
No, I mean like we don't know where he is. Like he's a ghost. Like that's what I mean.
Right. Yeah, he could be anywhere. Horrific.
Yeah, like until like the day he actually dies and that gets reported, we may not ever know where he is or what he's doing. Or unless he commits another crime, but that hasn't here it is. It's been since his release, it's now been 6 years. So I mean maybe, but I doubt it. I think
if he ever goes off his meds again.
That's true. But yeah, I guess we'll find out if he ever does. But
which like it's that's scary. I mean, as a person with a mental illness who takes meds, I very frequently forget them.
Right. But you've
They're
never
not as crucial as
I was going to say,
but
you've never hurt somebody physically, like you've never murdered someone as a result of it. So
No.
like there's a bit of a difference. I would hope that he has, like, he only has to report to the courts every year, but I'm hoping there's someone he has to touch base with soon, like more often.
Right, like a parole officer or something, but I guess it's like
Something.
technically not criminal, so I don't even know if it would be that.
It might be like a court ordered psychologist that he has to
Right, true, like
speak
a
with.
social worker or something.
Something. I mean, I don't know much about Canadian law that way, but Jesus. Like I said,
That's fucking nuts.
here in the US, he would have been dead one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah, he would have been dead, or he would have like, I
Or he
mean,
or he
it's
would have
bad that in the US we have mandatory minimum sentences, but
correct.
he would have at least had that.
Right. And in the US, he probably would have been tried as a criminal instead of someone with an illness, and therefore put in prison when really what he needed was the institution.
Right.
Because I hate to say it, our criminal justice system here is fucked up.
I mean, don't hate to say it. It's true, and you should say it.
That's true. It is fucked
I
up.
mean, there's so many instances of it's like someone with a mental illness, and often like a crime nowhere near as severe as like what we're talking about today, who truly needs treatment and can't afford treatment, and that's why they end up committing a crime. And we don't have space for that. We don't have space for rehabilitation in our criminal justice system.
No, we don't. And I even saw a news report where some, I don't know if it was a sheriff or the warden of a prison. I don't remember which one it was. And I'm pretty sure it was like Nevada or Arizona. It's one of those states. And they were talking about how the inmates of those prisons are basically doing work. Like they're actually doing work for the state, right?
Oh, it's 100%. Well, it's like there's a lot of how this is modern day Jim Crow, of how
Correct.
it's state sanctioned slavery, where there is, in the amendment that banned slavery, there is a caveat that it's like it's not allowed unless
Correct.
you're a ward of the state, unless that's punishment for a crime, where and then they can take you for, anything that and you end up in prison for theft, for, you know, relatively victimless crimes. You can end up as a slave of the state. And
Right.
that shit is fucked.
And
There's so much prison profit from it.
and so in this particular interview, that sheriff or warden, I can't remember which, actually said that they were saying something about, well, we find reasons to keep them in because we need them to do the work.
Yup.
He actually said it out loud.
They're like, the thing is, they're not ashamed to say it either. Like, it's so transparent that that's what's going on in the US for-profit prison system, and it's not talked about enough.
No, it's not. And you're right. It's the new Jim Crow. And in fact, I read a book. I can't remember the name of it now, but I did read a book. I think it actually was titled The New Jim Crow.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a book of that title. Yeah.
Yeah, and it blew me away. I had no idea how bad it really was until I read that book.
It's truly horrific. It really is. And yeah, there's a whole lot there. I mean, to our listeners, a recommendation to read that book. Very,
Yes.
very much. There's a
And
lot that isn't spoken about the US prison system and how people can lobby. I mean, these prison lobbies, it's a massive industry. And just to find out, do some research into how many things in your daily life are produced with prison, like indentured or slave labor in prison. It's appalling.
yeah, and I think there's a documentary that basically bases a lot of its information from that book as well. So even if you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to read the book, the documentary is on Netflix and it's called 13th.
Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, so that'll give you as much information as we're talking about now, or more than we're talking about. But yeah, that's a big problem. It's funny because we talk about, here we talk about all the time criminals that don't get the punishment they deserve. And on the flip side, you have people who are being punished far more severely than they deserve to be.
Right. Yeah. Or like, yeah, I guess we talk about true criminals on this. It's true crime. We talk about true criminals. But yeah, it's true that there are the system that has been built in this nation really does imprison so many people who are committing crimes that are so preventable, crimes that are caused by economic injustice. There's so much crime that is simply caused by, I am poor and I have to do this. Like, I have no other option. I have no choice. Like, people who, are suffering from addiction, who ended up that way because the US healthcare system is impossible to afford. And you end up suffering from an addiction to a substance that is the only thing you can afford to reduce your pain. And
Right.
it is truly so sad. It's so sad.
It's funny. You're so passionate about that. We should almost start up a second podcast.
God, I could talk about it all day. Like how
Yeah.
much, God,
Yeah.
I've
And
read about, and there's so much of it that ends up entwined with the race in this country, and with the institutions that have put people of color in positions of economic injustice, and how that is so intertwined with the criminal justice system, with the prison system. It's so
and
fucked up.
it's even more pervasive, because I remember reading a statistic that, I don't know what group it was, but they sent out job applications to all these different companies, and they would purposefully use names with strong ethnic sounding names, that were very obviously not European names. And the European names were 10 times more likely to get responses than the ones that were so obviously of non-European descent.
Right. And it's like, that's just scraping the surface. I mean, that study is a great example because of how clear cut it is, and how you literally cannot argue with the fact that that is clear as day racism. And
right.
And racism is so pervasive and has so many subtle, quiet ways that it is impactful. Yeah, I mean, obviously I could go on all day, and we're so past the point of this episode, but
no, but you know what? I'm certainly not going to edit this out, because it's important that we talk about it.
Right. Like if we talk about crime, we have to talk about the system.
Correct. What causes those crimes? And you're right. It's not just poverty. It's not just mental health. It's not just being a sadist. It's economics. Like we talk about murders, which generally, those are certainly outside factors, are certainly a part of it. But when you talk about crime in general, because like I said, our podcast, we do focus more on murders, economics, racism, all that stuff plays into it. When like you were talking about that case that you wanted to cover, and the whole reason this person got away with it for so long was his choice of victims.
Right, exactly. Which, yeah, I hope to, in a future episode, cover the case where I don't know his name off the top of my head, but yeah, like
it was
all
Samuel
of his
Little.
victims were Black women. Yeah, Samuel Little.
Yep.
And because of that, they weren't as investigated, and like just the injustice for those victims that is so indicative of how criminal justice works, and not just on the side of the perpetrators, but on the side of the victims, and how much that it is impacted, how much we investigate. It's definitely an interesting conversation.
Exactly. In fact, I look forward to hearing your case, because I want to see how far you dig.
Oh God, I'll get so deep. Might need to be a two-parter, because
hey,
I'm super passionate about it.
Sometimes it needs to happen.
And like conversations that have to be had.
Yes. But yeah, so that's where we'll wrap it up this week. We'll see you guys next week for another episode. I am Janus Stead.
And I'm Joyous Stead.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.